Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade, and today we're going to talk about 5 things that AEW actually gets right. But before we get into that, hit the like button on your way in the door, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and let's talk about 5 things that AEW actually gets right. Now, the reason why we're going to talk about this today is because I've found that I think a lot of my AEW content tends to be skewed a little bit negative. I don't talk about enough about the things that I do like about AEW. So I figured just to do a video just on the things that I do like, because I could do I could go on and on about things that I don't like, but there are things about it that I do like and that I do appreciate that make them different from WWE and most other wrestling promotions. So number 5, they emphasize tag team wrestling. Especially in having non-title tag team feuds. So I do appreciate that. For a long time, I'm not really the biggest supporter of tag team matches, but I do believe that they should exist. Tag team wrestling is a staple of the business. I think tag teams were created in like the 1930s or something like that. So you have this entire division where you could have these completely different complex matches and different styles and all this type of stuff. And WWE does not care about tag teams at all. They don't care about tag teams at all. And most other promotions, with the exception of maybe Ring of Honor, and to a lesser extent Impact, most of them treat tag teams as either opening acts or mid card acts. That's kind of typically how tag teams have been always been positioned. It wasn't until like the 80s or something like that where tag teams have been considered like main events. That was an NWA thing. I believe. What territory was it? I would know it if I sat down and watched it all the way through. But Mid South used to have tag team matches that were main events, and World Class also used to do 6-man tag team matches that was also main events. The Freebirds versus the Von Erichs. A lot of those were like different combinations of tag teams because there was 3 Von Erichs, there was 3 Freebirds. So sometimes you get all of those different mixed up versions of the teams. So yeah, you would get that, but after all the years of those things, sort of in the mid 90s, all that stuff really died out. Tag team matches were almost only time a tag team match is on the main event is if it featured 2 single stars. So it'd be like, what was it? Maybe Sting and Lex Luger versus the Road Warriors, or Sting and Lex Luger versus Scott Hall and Randy Savage, or something like that. That'd be like the main event of a show. But it's like 4 single stars in one match. AEW is sort of revitalizing the concept of tag teams being able to main event a show, even though they haven't main event a pay-per-view yet. But they do regularly main event shows. And they're regularly, easy for me to say, regularly featured as main points of the show. Like even before the introduction of FTR, the Young Bucks, who are some of the founding members of AEW, is a tag team, so they understand the concept of tag team wrestling, and that tag team wrestling needs to be important. And they did a good job of emphasizing tag team wrestling. Now, at the later end of the Kenny Omega Adam Page, now that was kind of a weird decision to put the title on 2 singles guys. Was a little weird after SCU, which is an established tag team. They went with Kenny Omega and Adam Page, which is essentially a WWE style 2 single stars as a tag team idea. So that was weird, but they made sure that people focused on that the tag team was the focus. So they didn't work a lot of singles matches. It was a lot of tag team stuff. They were tag team. So AEW putting the focus on tag team wrestling again is really good. I really appreciate it, especially when you talk about non-title tag team feuds. I don't think those exist in the WWE. They do exist in Impact. I'm not sure they exist at all in WWE. Having a feud between 2 teams that just want to like be better than each other and there's no title on the line, unheard of in Stanford. It's unheard of. Number 4, they have limited non-title matches. So back in the day, this is another thing that was created a long time ago, is that there was almost no conception of a non-title match. I forget when the non-title match was actually debuted as, probably in the 20s or the 30s. There was always a belief. They used to be called exhibitions. If you're wrestling the champion and there's no title on the line, it would be called an exhibition, right? So they would, the state athletic commissions would actually ban exhibitions, saying like if you wrestle the champion, the title has to be on the line. But WWE has exploited this whole concept of non-title matches. They have exploited the shit out of it, basically for the purpose of jobbing the champions out. So you will have this title match where the Intercontinental Champion gets beat in the middle of the ring by some guy who's going to wrestle for another title. He's about to wrestle for the world title, but he pins the Intercontinental Champion. Or, the tag team champions lose a non-title match. WWE really exploited that whole concept of the non-title, and then just having champions get abused, getting beat. Like it's fine to have them getting counted out and disqualified and stuff like that, but losing the match straight up, getting pinned, it just didn't seem to make sense. But AEW, they don't do a lot of that. There have been some non-title matches. John Moxley have wrestled some people non-title. I think Cody may have wrestled some people non-title. I think Brody Lee wrestled quite a few times non-title when he was TNT champion. It happens. FTR had an entire gimmick created around the concept of, exhibitions, and you will have like the 20-minute brush with greatness, which are non-title matches. But other than that, with the occasional match, they really put focus on if the champion is in the match, the champion is, one, going to probably win, two, that the title is going to be on the line. So they really put some effort into that, which I appreciate. I appreciate that, they're not just doing terrible things to their champions. So I can give them credit for that. Number 3, they space out their big events. They space out pay-per-views. Because of this, TV is much better. They can actually do stuff like a dog collar match on TV, a lumberjack match on TV, a street fight on TV. They can give away certain big matches on TV, like Jericho and Orange Cassidy, because they have, the pay-per-view is, maybe one per quarter or one every couple of weeks, every couple of months, rather. It's not one every 2 or 3 weeks like WWE. Or even some other promotions. Now, Impact also does this, obviously. They also do one pay-per-view every few months. They may do one pay-per-view every 3 months. And that actually makes your TV better, because now you can build up to big matches that will take place on TV. And it makes your TV more special. And it also helps you to do some of the other things I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But I appreciate that there is not an overwhelming number of pay-per-views. And I remember correctly that Cody was talking about that pay-per-view doesn't drive business anymore. That what drives business is television. And that, when you have strong television, you'll be okay, because that's what pays the bills. And you know what? He's not lying. That's very true. The difference is WWE has the network. If they just say, we're going to put huge matches on Raw or SmackDown, it may do great for TV. But then their network will die out. So they want to keep people watching the network. So they have to save certain things for the network. And in doing that, it makes the show suffer. Because now you just have endless... What must just go into it? Number 2, rotating talent. Which means it has a lot of different connotations. But to build off of what I just said, AEW does not have endless rematches. Because they spread everything out, and because they rotate talent get a run with just about everybody. Like Orange Cassidy didn't have a run with Cody. He had a run with Jericho, and then he's going to move on. Moxley got a run with MJF. Cody had a run with MJF. It was one match in each feud. Like Cody and MJF had one match. Their feud was long, but they had one match. Jericho and Orange Cassidy had 3 matches, and then after the 3rd match, they moved on. Then Orange Cassidy had 2 matches with Cody, then he moved on. You build up Cage, have Cage wrestle for the title, then he moves on. Lance Archer wrestles for champion, he moves on. Now, the downside to that is that you do get guys that are lost in the lurch. You got guys like, Lance Archer, who's not doing anything, Brian Cage, who hasn't even been on TV, or you'll have guys taking losses and then they'll disappear for a long time, because you're rotating talent in, especially some of the younger guys. You're really getting them in the mix. You're giving them opportunities. You're giving them space. Like Scorpio Sky got his run. Like he got to wrestle Jericho. He got some other big matches, and then he got, they moved him to the side. Now they're probably going to do the same thing with Eddie Kingston. He's going to get the spot. get a good run out of it, and then have to move to the side. Jericho, same thing. He got the good title run, and then he kind of moved down the card. And he started churning out sort of upper mid card matches with younger talent, but it's not the same stuff all the time. It's not constantly the same tag team match. It's not constantly not the same people. You see different people on the show. And even though their title eliminator tournament didn't make any sense because nobody was in the top 5, it made sense from the perspective of we don't want to just have Jon Moxley wrestle somebody he's already beaten, even though that's exactly what they were doing. The point was to get around that by injecting somebody who's not in the top 5 into the top 5. So that was sort of the point of the tournament, is to beat around the whole ranking system that they booked themselves into the corner with. And I could appreciate that. Like when you look at other promotions, namely WWE, they will constantly have the same match 3 or 4 months in a row. People talk about how long the Rey Mysterio, Seth Rollins feud has been going on, how long the Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre feud has been going on. Just imagine if they would have had Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton would have had that one match at SummerSlam. Randy lost, and then Drew would have moved on and did something else. Then you could have been clamoring for that feud to come back instead of being like, here it is 2 or 3 months later, and it's still going on, and you're like, I can't believe even after Hell in a Cell, they're still fighting, and that's just kind of how it is in WWE because they don't rotate their talent, so but AEW does a good job of rotating talent. Now that does make, things bipolar sometimes because you have some talent are goofy, like the Best Friends, and you'll have some talent that are serious, and then you'll have, and it'll be like, times where, like, you look at the Best Friends right now, as far as this is being recorded on October the 30th, then you would have, like, the Best Friends had that run with Santana and Ortiz. They had that big match, and then they fell down to the wayside a little bit, and then they had the matches with FTR, and then they kind of went quiet for a little while before they started rebuilding the feud with Miro and Kip Sabian. So they were still there, but they weren't emphasized anymore. They were de-emphasized a little bit. They worked their main event match, then they were de-emphasized. Then they came back up a little bit, then they were de-emphasized again. And now they're building them back up. That's the rotation that I'm thinking of, So it offers fresh looks at different talent. It allows you to introduce new talent and get new people over. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for fresh TV. You always have something different. You always have something new. And I can appreciate that. I can always appreciate not having to sit through the same matches again and again and again. Even if the match is going to be predictable, not having to sit through that same match again and again is great. Like they have shown great restraint on some of these matches and not overdoing them. Even if people are clamoring for a rematch, they'll say, well, maybe down the line. Like MJF and Cody, people clamored for another match because it was not a clean finish, and people were enjoying the feud. But they did one match, and they restrained doing anything else. They were kind of like, okay, we're going to leave it at that. The point was to get MJF to a certain level, and now he's on that level, and we pulled back the feud, ended it. And it didn't really hurt Cody at all. So I can appreciate that. And the number one thing that I find that I really like about AEW so far is that for the bulk, and I can't think of anything that they've done otherwise, is they have their championships defended straight up, whatever the rules are. So if it's a tag team title match, it's the tag team championship. It is one team versus one team. The TNT championship is not a triple threat match. It's not a fatal 4-way. Now, personally, I hate those multiple man title matches. They got 3 triple threat matches and all that type of stuff. I hate that shit. I think champions need to be established in a one-on-one format where the champion can get beat for the title. Rather than, oh, well, I won a triple threat match, but I didn't really beat the champion. And then I get to continue calling myself the champion, even though I didn't beat the champion. I just technically won a match. And WWE does it, and a lot of times they do triple threat matches because it's one of the people in the match they don't want to beat. So they're like, okay, well, somebody's got to be in this match to take the pinfall. And that's really terrible. That's terrible. Like, if you tell the correct story and you build the things the correct way, people are not hurt by losses. You can do things in a way where somebody is not hurt by a loss. Now AEW kind of does that. You know, they'll be willing to put a guy in the ring and risk hurting him in a loss, and they've done it a few times. They've been, you know, they damaged Brody Lee when he lost to Moxley. They damaged Brian Cage when he lost to Moxley. They damaged Lance Archer when he lost to Moxley and when he lost to Cody. And they damaged, you know, they damaged guys by doing the one-on-one thing. But it's still worth doing because you established a pecking order. You know, that the guy who beat them is more important. You know, you have to do that because the audience then responds. The audience falls in line to whatever it is you're trying to do. But when you don't have that clear established pecking order, going back to what I said the first time about the non-title matches, when you have the Intercontinental Champion is losing random singles matches, it's like, where does he fit on the card if he's just losing random singles matches? If he's just going to get beat by this guy who's going to later wrestle for the world title, then is the Intercontinental Champion the number 6 contender for the world title? Is he not a contender at all? You know, why should I care if that's the case? But that's the kind of stuff WWE does sometimes, and it really pisses people off. You know, it's like you have this guy, and I'm not saying that, I'm not one of those people that say, well, you're a champion, that means you should be unbeatable. I'm not one of those folks. But I am saying is that if you lose like non-title matches, that should be the impetus for a title match. And then you should be asking the question of, well, then the champion has to win that match, and that's 50-50 booking, and everybody hates 50-50 booking. It's like, yeah, people do, because it doesn't establish a pecking order. It doesn't establish who is greater than who I should be following and who I should care about. You know, oftentimes you'll get somebody, you know, plucked from the ether. They barely win matches. All of a sudden they're a champion. You know, they did it with Apollo Crews in 2020, where the guy went from barely winning matches at all to being the United States champion and winning matches all the time. You're kind of like, okay, you didn't build to this. You just kind of did it. You know, like the match that got him over was a match that he lost, which was to Aleister Black. You know, but that's the kind of things that they do in WWE that's really frustrating, and it does water the product down. But in AEW, they do a good job of kind of protecting their champions by having, you know, establishing the pecking order. Therefore, if the champion gets beat, then we're establishing a new top guy, a new alpha. You know, that's kind of how it is, and that's really the best way to do it. You know, since WWE's like, I know a lot of people are fans of the triple threat match, the fatal 4-way, and they want to do that stuff all the time. And I'm just like, no, I prefer the head up competition, head up, one-on-one. You know, we don't like you can cheat, you can have outside interference, you can have, you know, people come to ringside and pull a leg or something like that to cause a distraction. That's a better way to, you know, protect somebody. But, you know, this meaningless triple threat match that people might have, or this meaningless fatal 4-way match, just, you know, like AEW has so far avoided that stuff. You know, they've avoided that, and that's really been good, and I really appreciated them for that. But what are some things that you appreciate from AEW? Let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And donate to the channel if you can. Thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you later.